Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. So welcome to the 2023 series of APPNA MERIT Healthcare Research and Innovation Landscape in Pakistan webinar series. So we are back with the hiatus of few months. And as most of you are aware, this is a forum where we discuss about the various aspects of clinical research as pertain to Pakistan, and then try to see what kind of collaborative efforts we can do from the APPNA platform. My name is Sarwat Hussain. I'm a rheumatologist by training, and I am currently Director of Lupus Training Program at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And I'm the moderator for this. The panelists for today are Dr. Sarwat Hussain and Dr. Umar Hayat, who are here. And with that, I will introduce our speaker, who is very well known to all of you, is our very own Dr. Sarwat Hussain. And as per his request, I'll try to keep the intro a little bit brief so we can have a chance to benefit and learn from his vast experience. But very briefly, Dr. Sarwat Hussain is a graduate of King Edward Medical College and currently a professor of radiology at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. He's been associated with some of the leading universities in the world, including Harvard, Boston, Harvard in Boston, Aachen University, King Saud in Saudi Arabia, and then most recently at Massachusetts. And he has over 22 years as a department chair and 21 years as vice chair in US, Pakistan, and Middle East. He has published a large number of publications, papers, chapters, and abstracts, and so forth. He has been a great mentor, and I can go on and on and on. He was awarded the 2019 Humanitarian Award by the American College of Radiology and pioneered the Global Institute of Healthcare Quality in Pakistan. So with that, I would request Dr. Sarwat Hussain to please take it over from here. And his topic of discussion today is how to frame up research questions. So Dr. Sarwat, please.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining on this eve of Ramadan. I start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My topic for today is, if I can run the slides. I'm grateful to the leaders and of the APPNA MERIT, especially Uzair Bhai and Safraz Bhai and all the other stalwarts who started this this germination of this tree that is now beginning to bear fruit in the form of research adoption in Pakistan. Today, I'm going to try and see if we can put together certain thoughts in the minds of our younger researchers. Those who have published more than 10 papers don't need to attend this, and they can rejoin in about 50 minutes. Although if they do join, please give me a feedback, because this is going to be a really, really very basic starter of the season for our younger colleagues to think about how to begin to visualize research projects to begin their steps in the world of research. And framing the research question, I chose this topic as the starter of the season, is so that people can focus on what to include and what not to include in their journey to writing a research paper. And really, framing means that to focus on something and excluding something that is not necessary. So the question is an important vehicle. And one of the earliest questions that we know was asked to our knowledge is in the Holy Quran, when angel asked Allah, why are you placing on earth someone who would spread mischief? And there's plenty of example of the mischief going on in the world currently. But God Almighty, Allah Almighty, in his eternal wisdom say, I know what you do not know. And the questioning really is not going to leave us even after we die, because MNN, Munkar and Nakir, MNN company, Munkar and Nakir company are going to ask us question at least 3 questions before our spirit is going to make onward journey as to who is your Lord and what is your religion and who is your prophet. And this is our belief. And this actually is a belief of all the followers of the book. In this world, the questioning started, the importance of questions started long time ago, over 2,500, 2,600 years ago, where the all-important historic writings by Plato, the Republic, and he stimulates critical thinking and draws out ideas and underlying presupposition in the form of question and answer. So formulating a question is important and leads to great discoveries and great functions. More recently, Isaac Newton, when an apple plonked on his head, started thinking about gravity and led to great discoveries. And our own great leader, Quaid-e-Azam, asked a question as to why should Muslims not have a separate nation in the subcontinent? And guess what it led to the creation of Pakistan. So in that regard, even in the research, framing a question is probably the most important step in research. And I would urge our younger people to please spend as much time on a research and search of the right kind of question, because these will determine as to what you're going to do. In following the question, or in framing the question, it is important that you follow your passion and expertise, because it is a long, research is a long, tedious process that you mostly conduct during your own time and your family time and weekends, on top of your full-time clinical work, unless you happen to be a full-time researchers. And majority of our youngsters and senior people also in Pakistan are not in the research track, clinical track. And therefore, lots of frustrations, lot of roadblocks are going to come in your way. And unless you know the topic and you're passionate about it, you're going to succeed with great difficulty. And it's also important to focus on the topic of current interest and current research, a hot topic, a topic in which people are trying to find answers where there is gap in knowledge, and would like to hear about your thoughts and you contribute to the current knowledge. It's important. It's no good writing about role of antibiotic, preoperative antibiotic in avoiding infection, or writing about appendicitis, or writing about plain film and fracture of the femur. I mean, those kinds of things. It's important that you choose a topic that is tantalizing, that it stimulates inquiry, and people want to hear about it. And then make sure that your research is doable. Don't spread out the research topic in such a way that either you do not have the consumables, or you don't have the resources to do to conduct the research. And therefore, the focus and doability is important. And then, of course, discuss your thoughts with your mentor and with your colleagues. We tend to keep our own thoughts to our close to our chest, in the fear that somebody else will steal it. But remember that when 2 or 3 or 4 people work on the same topic, and each of them writes 3 papers, then if we all collaborate, there will be 12 papers for all 12 people. And of course, the knowledge will be multiplied by that much. Now, in order to finding which domain of research you can conduct, focus on, and this is just a reminder as to what are the various sections and silos of treatment, of course, of research. Of course, there are many others, but these are the main ones that clinical researchers can focus on, either the effectiveness or the risks of a treatment, and accuracy of diagnosis and their clinical application. This is a topic of my study myself for long time. Risk factors for diseases is an important, and we will share an example of one of these. And of course, the outcome, survival, and the prognosis is important, all important for everyone. So let's just see the example of maybe some current topics that may solve certain problem. And the question is, or one of the topic of research could be, is gender or are gender, age, or BMI, or are risk factors for long haul COVID? Long haul COVID is a topic of current interest, where, as you know, it's almost like a mysterious disease with no clinical boundaries, and everybody is grappling to find out what it is and what leads to it and what might be the treatment. So that is maybe one example of a current topic, and one can focus on one of these risk factors, either the gender or the age or the BMI, or for that matter, any other similar factor that is related with long haul COVID. Then there is, for example, another topic of perpetual problem and leading to morbidity and unnecessary mortality, is when the patients are not obedient to taking their medication and in time and in the correct doses for various reasons. It might be reasons of forgetting or reasons of economy. But the question really is, if you train and educate the attendants, people who are taking care of the patient, in improving taking the medication in time, does that improve the compliance and therefore, importantly, affect positively the outcome of the disease? Now, when you're thinking of a question which leads to the vision of your research, make sure that you are doing your research design or research thought or the process are credible and reliable, that people who, when they see or read your research, that your methodology is such that as little bias can be assigned to it as possible, and it is reliable and applicable. And that depends on what kind of data collection or what type and kind of data collection you have done. And this determines on the methodology, and we will share certain ways of doing research later on in terms of defining the various ways of collecting data. And then, of course, statistics has to be robust. Generally speaking, the researchers need to ask the assistance of medical statistician. It's important that you should have the help of medical statistician, because they can apply the appropriate statistical method that will be acceptable to the journal and the readers and will be more reliable. And of course, writing is the most important part of the research, because this is how you convey your thoughts and your findings and your results. And important to write the articles in a good English language, which is a problem in our in the non-English speaking parts of the world. And very large number of papers get rejected because it's not been written in the right way. These days, there are resources available for copy editing and copywriting online for very small amount of money, or you can liaise with one of those senior researchers who you think write good language. So language is extremely, extremely important, because this is how you communicate everything you have done to do your research. In terms of reliability and credibility, this is a pyramid of reliability. And right at the top of this pyramid is the systemic reviews. And if you notice the red and the green arrows, and the more the reliable your research is, there is less risk of bias, and everything is data driven and data proven, and more reliability. And at the top of the pyramid of reliability is the systemic review. Systemic review is something that is done by a large number of experts, editors sitting together and reviewing the literature and picking out the most reliable, most recent, and most credible research and summing it up together as a review and publishing it. And one of the most commonly known systemic reviews are the Cochrane reviews, and these are considered to be the most reliable, where wisdom of a lot of editors is put together. The second is the randomized controlled trial, and then the non-randomized controlled trial. And we will define that a little bit later on, because many of the younger research may not understand the concepts behind these terminologies. Then the observational studies are with comparison groups is probably the largest percentage of articles that are published these days. I would say maybe 80 or 90% of articles are observational studies with comparison group. And case study or case reports is something where all new research should start from. It's a good practice ground where you find a case that is rare disease, rare presentation, or rare complication, and or atypical response to treatment, that if you write that case report in order to slightly add to the current knowledge, then that's a good practice for you. I started with that, and I think most researchers start with that. And the expert opinion, that is the opinion of one individual who is known to be expert, is the least reliable. And this in contrast with the systemic review, where a large number of editors sit together and put their wisdom together. Expert review is just one individual, one person who writes his opinion on the given topic. So in the first thing in beginning the research question, or finding the research topic, or visualizing about your research, is what information do I need in order to start my research project? Because all research projects are written in the context or in the background of the known knowledge about that project. And where do you find that information? And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, where a search for the current relevant knowledge, complete knowledge, is important, and that in itself is a skill. And then within the framework of the known knowledge, where does my research or my writing fit in, whether it adds to the knowledge or it refutes some of the knowledge that is already there, or there is a spectrum of opinions about it. And all this is part of the research which needs to be thought of at the time when you're preparing to ask the research question. So therefore, when you search the preliminary review, we'll search it with not only to find the current landscape of the knowledge on a certain topic, but also identify the gaps in that knowledge where you can insert your research, you can insert or add to the gap or fill that gap by your own research in order to be credible for your research project. Now, obviously, there is a search and there's a research. Both are important. Search is just finding a fact where you ask a question and you get a fact which is already known and it has been recorded. You can ask a question, for example, how many doctors are being trained in Pakistan every year? For example, that's a question, and you get a number, whatever, 5,200, whatever the number is, and then that's the end of the story. But in research, you can ask a question or questions where you say, what led to the increase in the number of trained doctors in Pakistan? Now, here's a question on which certain deliberation can take place. And you can say, okay, well, change in the entry criteria or economic reason or increase in the number of the medical colleges. So these are the three larger questions. And clearly, these questions are very wide, and it is not possible. Well, it is possible, but it's not reasonable and feasible to address all these questions at one time. Instead, you can say each of these topics, number of seats, entry criteria, and economic reasons, you can take one of those topics and let's say change in entry criteria into the medical college and discuss what are the various factors that led to the increase in number of trained doctors in Pakistan, say economic factor or medical colleges. So in here, we are choosing what are the factors that led to the change of the entry criteria into medical college, or what are the reasons that led to the change in the medical criteria. So you can do a research project, for example, in this, by making a broad question into a much narrower focus questions. Then sometimes the research question may be very narrow, and you may need to broaden it. For example, you can have a question which will say, how did the shortage of insulin affect the postmenopausal women 50 years of age in 2010? So that really restricts a very narrow cohort of patients and you can broaden it. And you can say, how does the insulin shortage affect older women, for example? And you can, so framing means you can enlarge the picture in order to fit the frame, or you can reduce the picture in order to fit the frame. And that is a judgment that has to be made in order to make sure that your results are succinct, are focused, and they are meaningful addition to the current knowledge. Now, if you're having difficulty in developing a research question, then, and you must do the research, then the best way really is to write an abstract. And this is a tedious work, but nevertheless very rewarding, and it forces you to visualize what you're going to do, is to write an abstract of how your paper will look. An abstract will have, of course, the introduction and the results and the discussion, and of course, the methodology as to material, method and material. So introduction, method, material, results, and discussion. And leave the gaps of specific knowledge, but still write an abstract as to how you're going to frame it. If even that is not possible, then start with the case report as we started earlier. So the steps are: write a case report, then write a case series, then write a case series or report with review of the current literature, and that will mature the that will evolve the thinking process in order to reach the more complex and more robust research, and while at the same time continue to add to the knowledge of conducting research. Now, let us discuss certain terminology of search and research, which are commonly spoken, which I know all the seniors will know, but I think for our younger colleagues, this might be useful. So you will always hear about cohort of this, cohort of that. So basically, cohort is a group of patients or subjects that have a certain characteristics that is determined by the researcher in order to lump a certain group of patients together. So a cohort may be a cohort of smokers versus a cohort of non-smokers. It may be a cohort of female patients of certain group, that's one cohort, female or male or any other patient with other characteristics, or cohort of diabetic patient, irrespective of other common natural variations, or cohort of patients with heart disease. For example, one of the most famous research project is the Framingham study, is really the cohort, excuse me, are the heart patient. And we'll talk about that Framingham study a little bit later on also. So the type of research are the primary research, where you actually collect the data conducted by your own experiment, and this is the new information, or secondary research, which is the search where you, as we talked earlier, published literature and reviewing it to create a context, to create a reference point of your research against which you're going to fit your research into the known knowledge. So also we hear about prospective and retrospective study. Now, large number of studies are retrospective study, large number of studies are descriptive studies, and descriptive comparative study, but there are prospective studies also. So the simple rule of understanding prospective and retrospective is, first you recruit the patient, and then the outcome of the patient is evident. So outcome after recruitment. Okay, so first recruitment, then after that the outcome. But in the retrospective, first the outcome and then the recruitment. And let's just see a few examples of that. For example, in prospective study, you will recruit TB negative patient at risk for contacting the disease, follow them, and find out how many actually contacted the disease and how many did not. But in retrospective study, you will recruit patients who already have TB and analyze them and look at the rear view mirror in order to see what were the risk factors that led to the TB, developing the TB. In other words, like we said before, I'm showing this slide again, that the recruitment first, then the outcome after recruitment. But in this case, tuberculosis, non-affected patients, follow them, and then until the outcome. In retrospect, it is the outcome that is TB, and then you recruit them after they have developed TB. So here is another example of randomized control and non-randomized controlled trial. The randomized controlled trial, you have a group of patients and blindly assign them to the control group and to the treatment group. Neither the assigner nor the patient know whether they're in the treatment group or in the control group. So that is randomized controlled trial, and you follow them up for whatever the outcome that you have determined at the outset to study. But if you give the choice of assignment to the patient or the doctor, that is called non-randomized controlled study. So the randomized controlled study is when no one knows which group the patient belonged to, and then the intervention occurs. So there's a patient, there's intervention, and there is a follow-up. While the non-randomized, you have assignment is known to the patient and or to the researcher. Now, cross-sectional study and cohort study. Cross-sectional study basically is studying the outcome of outcome. Let's say, for example, here is a patient who, what happened here? Here is a population of target patient, and you have patients without outcome, that is in a way prospective. You expose some patient, you expose some other patient, and then study as to how many developed disease and how many did not in both exposed and unexposed group. If you study them at a given time, once in a given time, that is called the cross-sectional study. If you follow them over a period of time, that can be the cohort study or non-randomized controlled trial. My slide is not moving. Why is it not moving? Okay, so then is the quantitative study and the qualitative study. This is very simple because quantitative study, wherever there is numbers and statistics, no matter whatever the study is, that is called the quantitative study. Qualitative study is when you want to discuss concepts. You may show an audio or a video of something, or you may discuss the behavior of doctors, patients, or society, and you want to discuss the barriers to, let's say, compliance to medication, like we talked earlier, or behavior of surgeons in the operation room, for example, or a concept about certain happenings in the society. So where there are no numbers, basically where there are numbers, there are quantitative, and when there are no numbers, they are qualitative. Then, of course, when there is quantitative data, we need to also know what the terminologies are used in literature. Now, the reason we are introducing these basic, really basic stuff, and kind of I'm ashamed with the more senior people that it's too basic for them, but nevertheless, when you read the literature, when you search for the literature and read the literature, in order to understand what the literature is saying, you need to learn and know the terminology. It's just like when you want to read about computer, you need to know what computer terminology means. And similarly, when you want to read about laboratory, you need to know what the laboratory data means. Similarly, quantitative data may be discrete when there are full numbers, 1, 2, 5, 10, whatever, and or continuous number when the fractions are used in order to describe a certain phenomenon or certain quantity in the literature. The nominal data is generally, just the name suggests, name of the person or a place or an object or equipment. That is nominal data. And the ordinal data is rank ordered data, first, second, third, or good, excellent, poor, or will recommend, not recommend, unlikely to recommend. And this kind of data is used mostly in the survey questions. And then the cardinal data, which is the data full numbers that we discussed earlier. Now, so like we discussed earlier in the types of studies, the randomized and non-randomized, there is another way, which is well known, to work out the framework of your research or your research question, is that there are always a certain input that is involved, which is either in the kind of patient or in the a group of patient population, or a problem that you're going to discuss, which is the P, and the acronym is PICO or PICO. Then the intervention, that what are you going to do, or what are you going to apply to the P, the patient population of the problem, how you want to modify the patient or problem or population. So that is called the intervention. And then you then compare intervention, in other words, patients who are exposed to the intervention and the patients who are not exposed to the intervention and compare them with each other in order to bring out the data or the outcome of your intervention. And that is one way of writing or completing a paper. For example, in a patient population with acute myocardial infarction, you could say, okay, the intervention is going to be, does early treatment with statin affect the outcome of patients who might develop acute myocardial infarction? So you compare.
Dr. Sarwat, sorry, I think we're going to probably say the same thing.
Sorry?
The slide decks are not moving, so you can restart and see if they are working. I'm sorry. The slides are not moving. So, yeah, so you can restart the slide deck.
Can you see
so
it?
It will be working.
Is it work? Can you see this? Not moving?
No, it's not moving. So restart the slide deck, please.
Okay, sorry.
Stop sharing and share again will help you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course, of course. Stop sharing. And
share.
I'm so sorry. Where did we get stuck?
Stop. It's a cross sectional where you were discussing. Yeah. Move forward. Yeah.
Do we see this now?
Yes, you covered this.
Okay.
Yeah, move on. Next one.
Yeah, I'm going actually. Okay.
Yeah, move on. Yeah, this was the one where it was.
Okay, so quantitative and qualitative. Yeah. Sorry. So we were talking about once you have the data, we need to then know the terminology as to what the data means. And really the discrete data is the filled numerals, and continuous data when you have the fractions. And then type of data is nominal data, where it is as the name suggests, the name. And ordinal data is rank ordered, and this is particularly useful in the survey question as to the patient's preference or liking. And of course, the cardinal data we have discussed before. So one of the well-known technique or acronym for reaching a research project or framing the research project or writing your research project and thinking about it is to have the input factor or population or a patient or a problem. You're going to study a certain problem. And then intervention as to what it is that you're going to conduct or do to the the population. Are you going to give them risk factors, medication, or whatever it is that you're studying? And then you compare the data between those who are exposed and those who are not exposed, and then study the outcome. Well, here's an example. For example, in patients with acute myocardial infarction, the intervention is going to be whether early treatment with statins, whether that affects the outcome or incidence of acute myocardial infarction. And you divide the group into one with statin treatment and the other without statin treatment or placebo. And then in the outcome, you study the decreased cardiovascular mortality or not. Similarly, there are other examples over here where women suspected of coronary artery disease, or let's say in postmenopausal women, does hormone replacement therapy increase the risk of breast cancer or not? And you do the same thing, patients who receive HRT and who do not, as to whether there is any improvement in mortality from breast cancer in the two groups. One receives the HRT and the other do not. So then we come to the literature search. Now, as I said, search is as important, forms the basis of all research. And it is important that the search in the literature is done in the most efficient and the most focused manner to get the best possible results, and get only those results that you are going to be useful to you. So before the literature search is done, you formulate a question that is answerable research question, and identifying the basic concepts, and also gather the synonyms that certain concept or certain query may be known by more than one names. So you include in your research inquiry all the primary concepts and their synonyms or the other names of it. Then locate the medical subject heading and mesh. Combine these concepts into Boolean operation where you say and, or not, and then refine the research terms and search in the PubMed. Now, the resources available are PubMed has 32, a large number of record, the largest number of record, 32 million. Medline has less, and the PubMed Central has even less, but nevertheless, these are the records that it should be on your focus in order to find the information that you get. And the more focus it is, the less literature you will have to read in order to extract the relevant information. Therefore, framing the search question is as important as framing the research question. You don't want to end up with, kind of 500 articles, and the, these review of those articles will never end. So you want to try and focus in such a way that you have a manageable number of articles, because you're going to have to read or review or extract relevant information for yourself. Now, in writing the article, it is important that you define and describe and make up your mind as to which journal or journals, better one journal that you want to submit your article to the first time, the first submission to a certain journal, and become very familiar with the style of not only citation and references, but also their headings, and read very carefully as to what they need, because every comma, every stop, every colon, every semicolon really, really does matter. And maybe 40% of the article, sometimes even 60% of the article, is the way you present your writing and the methodology. If, for example, our methodology is such that there is information and learning by the readers only by your methodology, even if your research is not the most cutting edge, I can tell you as a chief editor of a journal myself, that even the robust methodology can increase the chance of your article to be submitted or to be accepted and published. So be very careful, especially those places where English is not the first language. Many times the article may be good and the research may be robust, but the way it has been written or the author's instructions had not been followed, the article may be rejected, because you remember that the editors and the journal receives a large number of articles from which they publish less than 25%, depending on the type of the journal, less than 25% of the 25% is a high percentage. Much less than that percentage of articles are so your article is in competition with the rest of the articles in its ability to attract the attention of the editor and everything that goes into it. So here are the various ways that citation can occur. Make sure that your citation conforms to the author's instructions, and even the way you have cited is very, very important, because if you don't do it correctly, it is an extra work for the journal, and it costs resources and money. Right at the end, plagiarism is theft, and plagiarism really is act of presenting another work to or idea as your own. And in the another's work does not have to be a published work, does not have to be work that has been written by authorities. It may even be, plagiarism may even be an idea that, or some writing or a paper, a term paper that your colleague has written, and you are presenting that work as your own. So you could argue that each and every article has plagiarism, because you, in your introduction, you write about what other people have said about it. So as long as you're not presenting as your own work, it is not plagiarism, which means that you acknowledge as references or as text that such and such idea has been forwarded by someone else, and I'm quoting it for the purpose of relevance and for the purpose of filling the gap in the knowledge. So plagiarism is unfortunately common in the parts of the world where research is not prevalent and people are not familiar with research, so they tend to copy. And this can destroy your reputation. It can end your careers of people who do plagiarism. Fortunately, plagiarism, because we are Muslims, because we are honest, plagiarism does not occur in Pakistan. And I think many of us will vouch for that. So, and to sum up, we say the research plan should be to arriving at a suitable title, understand the relevant theme or the landscape or the background of the title or the domain, then find the available data. And the available data is both the data that has been written and your own data, and where to send, which journal to send, and then formulate definite research methodology, undertaking the primary research and data collection, initial drafting, proofreading, and sending to publication. It is not uncommon that if your paper is rejected by a higher tier journal, that you start resending it to gradually to the lower tier journals until it gets accepted. Majority of the papers will get accepted, but every time you resubmit a paper to another journal, you need to rewrite according to and complying with the author's instructions of that journal, which is very important indeed, because text and substance is important, but presentation is actually more important, because that gets you into the door that the editors will begin to read your paper as to whether it should be accepted or not, because a large number of paper are rejected just by virtue of their title not being suitable and their layout not being suitable and their references not being done properly. It's also important to have the references in the text, of course, that should coincide with the references at the end of the paper. And with that, thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. And I'm going to now submit myself to the panelist and the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarwat. Of course, very enlightening, and what a great start to the 2023 Merit webinars. Dr. Uzair is here, Dr. Umar is here as our panelists, and I see the Q&A and chat is lighting up like a Christmas tree. So a lot of questions. So Dr. Uzair, please take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Sarfraz Hasni, and thanks a lot, Professor Sarwat. You are what we call it, not in English, in Urdu, babae, medical research and, at the forefront of artificial intelligence, enlightening and training in King Edward Medical University and many other institutes, and took part in improving the quality and had many initiatives. We are really extremely grateful for your participation and this enlightening speech. Thank you very much. So we have a few questions. The first one is from Sheikh Ahmed Gul, and it's, sir, I am still confused about qualitative and quantitative data in terms of genetics, particularly the gene identification. Please elaborate it in the light of genetics. So if you can, please elaborate on this thing.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I know nothing about genetics. The only genes I know that I wear over the weekend blue in color. But basically, the qualitative and quantitative data, if you have numbers, it becomes a quantitative data. For example, you can have surveys of on a certain topic, and the surveys will tell that so many percentage of people said this and so many percentage. That becomes a quantitative data. Qualitative data really is more so, actually, qualitative paper, there's very little or no data in the qualitative. So it's a qualitative research and quantitative research. Qualitative is like editorial, for example, in which the opinions of the editor is given, or a writing perspective of certain experts on a topic of interest and current. So that's what I understand. And I think there are greater researchers around here. If somebody wants to add to it, I'll be very pleased, and I'll learn myself what they have to say.
Thank you. We will share this information. So the next is not a question, it's a request from Dr. Harim. She is interested in getting more information about doing research and joining some of your research activities. She is a radiologist from Pakistan, and she has cleared some of the steps. With your permission, I shall share your contact information to her so that she can directly contact you. So I think that's going to address Dr. Harim's request. So
can I make can I make a comment? I think basically I actually was not going to announce it, but I'm going to announce it right now, that I have undertaken to write a textbook of radiology involving Pakistani authors and the Middle Eastern and Eastern authors to describe of imaging of diseases that occur in our part of the world, because we are sick of, well, not we are not sick, but we have to read the textbook written by the Western author that discusses and focus on Western diseases. So all radiologists are invited to contribute to that book, and even if you submit a picture, illustration, we will have your name under that illustration. So that's a good beginning.
Thank you for a very generous offer. So the next question is, what is operational definition in research? So
what is operational? I'm sorry,
definition.
I didn't.
So I think maybe we can elaborate if we know more detail about this thing, because the question is not very clear. And the next one is, can we have the free software for citation? Is there any such thing?
Yes. Actually, there are software citation. I think Grammarly might have. There are several softwares. In fact, there are several softwares that will insert the citation into your text automatically once you have a list of those available. So the answer is yes. And I think Dr. Sarwat Hussain, who is the ultimate researcher that I know, may be able to answer this a little bit more.
Endnotes.
Endnotes is one, yeah.
Endnotes is the number one. Everybody use Endnotes. So if you use Endnotes and if you learn how to use it, it will make your life so easy. that I use it all the time, and everybody I know uses EndNotes.
Excellent.
And
Thank
it's
you.
and if
Dr.
you're using
Sarwat.
Microsoft Word, it's integrates with Microsoft Word very easily.
Excellent. So I think the same question is from the same person. For the new researcher, how to start all about this?
Well, as I alluded to this, I think you should start honestly writing a case report, and the elation and encouragement once you see your case report and your name in print is enough to drive you to the next step and more research. Because doing research and writing in English and having it published is a very daunting task for the beginners. And so please write anything, not write anything, I mean, write on a case report to start with, and then become a part of an ongoing research, even it does not give you authorship, because the amount of learning you will do will make you an author in the near future.
I was just going to say one quick thing, if I can, maybe.
Please, please.
So I was going to say that even if you're starting to write anything, and there are guidelines to write everything. And if there is I think there is a website from Oxford University, which gives you all the guidelines if you're doing a case report, if you're doing a clinical trial. So you maybe just go to there. I'll quickly find it if I can find it in my slide deck, and I can just share it. It's an Equator network. So I will copy this and put it in the chat for people who want to maybe benefit from that. And it's very good. I mean, you use that and it will help tremendously.
Thank you, Dr. Sarfraz. So I think we are dot on time. It's like 1 hour complete. So taking this liberty, I will just ask one question to Professor Sarwat, because he has a great taste for AI. So what's your view about the GPT-4 and the open Bing search, which has been launched recently? Their use in research, and you mentioned about plagiarism. So how are we going to address that?
Well, actually, that's a very, very good question. And in fact, I'm kind of writing an opinion article on ethics in research at this time. So this is really part of ethics. And I really think that just as Google has facilitated ready information on a certain topic and made the research so easy, I think that AI is going to be in the same group. And as we have the software of plagiarism available at this time that can tell you percentage of plagiarism, there will be software which will tell you how much of what has been written is actually been picked up from GPT-3 or from Bing. But until that happens, I think it's a free for all. You can download, whatever the GPT will tell you, but please do never present the whole thing that GPT tells you as your own, unless you, as an honest person, unless you make major edits to that text in your own style and focus to the target audience that you have chosen.
Thank you very much. We have Dr. Umar Hayat, and I will request Dr. Umar Hayat to formally thank to you and formally close, because we are just like 3 minutes over to the session. Dr. Umar Hayat, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussain. It was a pleasure, and Dr. Sarwat, very nicely done job. I have nothing to add. I mean, itself is very amazing, but I will make one comment, Dr. Hussain, because before you joined, we were talking about this. This was your baby, okay? And we are so happy to have you, and the initiative you took, it has made an amazing difference in the community, I mean, Pakistan diaspora abroad, but also in Pakistan. And we were chatting and joking, actually. And one joke was, this year is a year of grandkids. So it's no more, you have been already father, I mean, you have the baby, but this year we are going for really the grandkids. And what I mean by grandkids is we have discussed a lot. What are our weaknesses? What are our strengths? What are the institutions? What kind of research is going there? But this time we are really going after like what projects we are bringing in, what projects we have done, where the collaborations have been mediated. So looking forward to this year. And again, thank you everybody for participating. We're going to continue to these seminars and there will be more coming. Please join us. I'm not sure what the frequency is, Dr. Uzair, you can mention probably in an email or in a chat box, but looking forward to this great year and we're going to have a lot of fun. Please join. And also we are always looking for the speakers with cutting edge topics, I will say. Please share your interest and share your contact information. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. So before we end, real quick, there are like a lot of questions that remain unanswered. And there are questions in the chat box and questions in the Q&A. Is it possible, Dr. Sarwat, that people can contact you offline? Can we share?
Yeah, please. Or if somebody is it possible to forward those questions so I can write the answer one by one? Because
okay. Yes.
you know, getting so many emails is going to be kind of, I think, overwhelming a little bit.
All right.
So if that's possible.
I think that Waleed can answer that. I'm not sure, but I just want to acknowledge that there are many questions, but in the interest of time, we are curtailing that. So maybe offline or somehow they can contact the APPNA and we can forward those questions to Dr. Sarwat.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, we generally do that. Generally, we do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Sarwat. Thanks, bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.